must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
And one major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 46 after the hour, and today I want to take aim at some comments made by the governor of Oregon, John Kitzhaber, MD, serving his historic 4th term in the governor's mansion here in Oregon. And the governor has some problems with marijuana legalization as passed by Measure 91. This is something that's happening right now. We passed Measure 91 with 56% of the vote. And that was the highest support a marijuana legalization plan has ever drawn out of the 4 states that have voted on it. But the legislators in Salem and now the governor seem to think the voters didn't know what they were doing when they voted on Measure 91. It's a strange phenomenon. Back in 2012, when it was Measure 80, we rejected it with only 46% of the vote. And at the time, they told us it was because voters didn't like the details of the initiative, that they supported legalization in general, but didn't like the unlimited possession, didn't like the unlimited cultivation, didn't like the 7-member cartel of growers that would be the sole point of purchase that would set all the prices. Apparently in 2012, we voters read the details of Measure 80 and rejected it. But then in 2014, when our support goes up a full 10 percentage points to 56%, why, that's just because we voted on legalization in general, and we weren't really paying attention to the details, and we didn't really want what we voted on as far as 8 ounces of possession, 4 plants, the state being the sole source of taxation, and so forth. The legislators seem to think that we're idiots, and they've got to fix the mistakes we've made before the law has even been implemented. Let's implement that law and see what happens. Let's do what the voters supported. And then if we need to make fixes, we can make fixes. As my chart shows you here, over 100,000 more voters chose Measure 91 than chose Governor Kitzhaber. It's time to listen to the will of the voters. Let's see what Governor Kitzhaber has to say on the issue on this video provided from the Oregonian newspaper.
One of it has to do with the home grow provisions, which seem sort of out of sync with a regulated market. The amount you can actually grow in a home grow operation seems to me to exceed the amount that you're supposed to be able to have legally. I don't know how you enforce that, whether you right now could be out in your yard. So there's some real questions, some definitional questions there.
See, this is a part that really concerns me, this idea that the home grow amounts are too much. First of all, in the state of Colorado, they're letting people grow 6 plants, 3 mature, 3 immature. In Alaska, it's going to be 6 plants, 3 mature, 3 immature. In Washington, D.C., it's 6 plants per person, 12 plants per household. So Oregon has already voted on the lowest amount of home grow allowed in any of the states that allow home grow. 4 plants, and not 4 plants per person, 4 plants per household. Is this part of the reason Measure 91 got 56% of the vote as compared to the other states that did worse? Maybe so. Maybe the will of the voters here should be listened to. In the picture there, you can see a small 4-plant garden in someone's backyard, and the amount of weed you could then harvest from that garden would be 2 ounces per plant. Now, a lot of growers can do better than that, but at least the worst growers, even getting 2 ounces per plant, shouldn't be criminalized because they've now got more than their 1 ounce of possession. It should also be noted, Governor Kitzhaber, that in Colorado, they allow for the possession of all of the results of harvests. That's a number without an upper bound, Governor. That means residents of Colorado right now can store pounds and pounds and pounds of marijuana and just claim those to be the results of their harvest. So already, Oregon is starting with a limit that is far lower than what's going to be allowed in Colorado. In Alaska, you can possess up to 4 ounces at home under their state's privacy laws. That's been in effect since 1975. We haven't heard of any major problems with people home growing in Colorado or home growing in Alaska. And for further evidence of this, we need only look at our state's medical marijuana program, where patients are allowed to cultivate 24 plants, 6 mature, 18 immature. If we've been able to have these medical marijuana people cultivating so much home grow, why is it then when someone's healthy that we should be more scared of how much marijuana we're growing? We're already accepting a far lower limit than patients. And if you want to enforce it, just get a GPS and a scale.
I'm concerned about law enforcement. You know, one of the reasons that I had recommended during the campaign, obviously not particularly effectively, that we wait a couple of years and learn what we can learn from Colorado and Washington, is that, you know, there's no breathalyzer test for driving under the influence of marijuana, and so how do you actually enforce this on the roads?
This is another lesson that we have learned from Colorado and Washington state. First of all, driving under the influence of marijuana is already illegal in the state of Oregon. It's not as if legalizing marijuana under Measure 91 has suddenly made cars and marijuana smokers. They've already existed. And this idea that now that we've legalized, we need some sort of magic number that tells when someone's a stoned driver just makes me wonder, how have we been catching the stoned drivers so far? How are we doing it right now? We've got over 70,000 medical marijuana patients. We've had tens of thousands of patients for years now. And yet we see marijuana related accidents. We see all accidents going down in this state, as they've gone down in all the states that have legalized marijuana. Measure 91 calls for a study on an effective way of combating marijuana impaired driving, one that is actually scientifically reliable, rather than these 5 nanogram per se laws that we see in Washington or permissible inference that we see in Colorado. These magic numbers have no bearing in science, and all they do is serve to convict and allow for the harassment of unimpaired drivers who happen to use marijuana. And it's a problem. It's a solution in search of a problem. As we look at the numbers in the state of Oregon, in this graph, Oregon is the blue line, and what we're graphing is the number of traffic fatalities since 2004 and the relative percentage of whether they've risen or fallen. Since 2004, traffic fatalities were up in 2005 and 2006 in Oregon, but they have been down ever since. There are more than 30% fewer traffic fatalities in Oregon in 2013, after we've got all these medical marijuana dispensaries and tens of thousands of patients. The same kind of declines can be found in Colorado and Washington state, the two sets of green lines, where they are down below 20% fewer traffic fatalities. And even in California, which some people would say is de facto legalized, their rates of traffic fatalities have also fallen. Not one of these states have more traffic fatalities now, after a decade of widespread marijuana reform and legalization. And so I see no reason why to get all scared about impaired drivers now when they haven't existed so far.
And we're completely understaffed in terms of the state police highway patrol function right now. You got parts of Southern Oregon that don't really have any effective law enforcement, so that's another big concern.
Well, this concern about the staffing of police is something that the supporters and authors of Measure 91 took into account. We all want to have safe communities. We all want to see that the police are properly funded. The Legislative Review Office in the state of Oregon evaluated that between 2017 and 2019, Oregon is going to reap about $50 million in marijuana tax revenues. $50 million. Now, 15% of that, or $7.5 million, is already earmarked to the state police. It's the equivalent of 149 first-year state troopers' salary. So if you need to hire more state troopers, Governor, here is some money for that. $7.5 million, averaging out to about $2.5 million per year. We're all for hiring some more police officers. That'd be about 50 new state troopers that we could hire over that 3-year period. Furthermore, for the local communities, 10% of the pot tax money, $5 million, goes to county law enforcement. Another 10%, another $5 million, goes to local law enforcement. Marijuana legalization is providing the tax revenue necessary to hire more law enforcement at the state, county, and local level without raising any sort of property taxes or having any levies that are politically unpopular. Why the governor would be running away from free money that's already out there being spent on the black market, why he would oppose diverting that now to the legitimate law enforcement needs of the state is beyond me. And to think that the sheriffs and the district attorneys of the state of Oregon raised money on public time fighting against Measure 91, and now they want to complain that they won't have enough money to enforce it. And as they're complaining about it, rape victims and crime victims all throughout the state suffer when there are not enough police officers to staff the 911 lines, the 911 responses during the weekends and after hours. We want to change that.
I guess the third concern is how do you set up a framework that forces most of the activity into the regulated market, right, and reduces the black market. So this is going to be a really important conversation to make sure that we do this as best as we can here in the state of Oregon, and I want to be an active part of that conversation.
Well, you can be an active part of the conversation, Governor, but you also need to understand that the will of the people have spoken. 56% of them supported marijuana legalization. You couldn't even get a majority of the voters in Oregon to support your elected office. You got like 49.5% of the vote. More Oregonians voted against you than voted for you. I think it would be instructive to pay attention to what the voters voted for and to not think that we're idiots. To understand that we saw the details of Measure 91 and we believe that they provided important solutions to the lessons we learned in Colorado and Washington. The lessons we learned is don't overtax and don't underproduce. Both states overtaxed marijuana. They had the prices far higher than the black market. That is what encourages the black market. And Washington licensed too few producers, which led to a decrease in supply and an increase in price. Oregon's single point of taxation at just $35 an ounce ensures that we will have a competitive low price that can beat the black market when you add in the price or add in the convenience and selection that you'll get at a marijuana store. And if these cities and counties decide to ban access to commercial marijuana, and if the legislature lets them tax it at the local level, I guarantee you that will raise the price of marijuana, and that is exactly what the black market wants. Well, folks, that's all the time we got for Hour 1 today, but stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. Be back taking your calls at 971-533-7111. Got plenty of stuff to talk about in Hour 2, including a look at the ideological differences in the Missouri marijuana movement. It's the latest episode of the soap opera As the Bowl Burns. For everyone here at 420radio.org, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.